Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this fourth and final installment of Cyber Aware, What's Keeping You Up at Night. I am Jesse Silver. I'm the practice director here for the security compliance team at Red Level. I'll go on a little further introduction about myself here in a moment. So again, we are in our fourth and final installment of our Cyber Aware. Today, we're going to be talking about one of our very near and dear clients in the financial sector who was recently audited by a third-party independent auditing agency, and the results may shock you. Tune in for more. So that's the fourth and final. Just a reminder, the other webinars are available and recorded, so please circle back and check those out. They were very cool, the October 5th, 12th, and 19th. We covered some really in-depth stuff, especially last week on the 19th. We actually kind of went through a kill chain of a compromise, a couple compromises, and yeah, and I think especially the one on the 5th too is very valuable to see how doing defense in depth is proof in the pudding about how its strategy works to prevent a breach, because we experienced a first or second layer security failing, which again we anticipate, and the attackers didn't get in because we're doing our jobs. Great. So this fourth and final case study, I'm calling proof in the pudding. I think I said that earlier on this call, on this webinar, but anyway, we have a financial services client with highly sensitive data and extremely sensitive clientele, right? So this is a very special client in a special industry. So they obviously have regulatory and compliance and just hardened security needs at the forefront of their ethos. So we came in to help. They engaged Red Level for comprehensive cloud-first security and compliance management, right? So they're really all up with us. We're all in with them. We're doing everything. And I'll go into what that means here in a few minutes, and I'll just kind of do an overview. And really the proof in the pudding here is that a third-party audit identified them as one of the most secure organizations they've ever audited. So we celebrated this internally. The client celebrated this. It's just a really big deal for us to have validation from a completely third-party, paid for fancy audit, right? This isn't just us auditing ourselves or the client saying, oh, good job. This is a very fancy, expensive third-party audit that came in and gave us an A+ grade. So we really like that. And for you, let's talk about their journey, right? Where did we start? How did we get here? The independent audit findings, I already spoiled that, and then our continual improvement together. So I'm going to keep this one fairly high level compared to last week's, just because obviously in my practice, we have very sensitive clients and data, and I can't just say, oh, this company had this happen to them, or look at this company's secure score. I can't obviously go into that detail. We have very sensitive stuff I want to cover. So I have to keep it fairly high level, but I think this will give you a good idea about how you can start this stuff, how to think about it, where to start, not just how to start, and also what continual improvement and what being a cloud-first secure and compliant organization means in perpetuity from here on out. So that's really what I want to talk about today, and let us dive in. So their journey, right? This first one I'm gonna go into a little bit of detail on, but essentially one of the first things we did was we migrated all of their data and services to Microsoft 365 and Azure. Now, some of you may think, wait a second, does that mean you just took all your legacy apps or your on-prem apps and you turn them into SaaS apps and single sign-on? Well, in life in general, yeah, that'd be a dream, right? That's what we want to do. You want to pay someone else to deal with all of your issues, and you just single sign on into that app, and then you have all your baseline security in place, which is great. But we all know that in reality, that's tough. Some apps, you have to have a desktop version, right? Some apps have to have a SQL database that you're hosting, right? It's just there's a cloud difficulty component to a lot of these applications that we can still manage to have a cloud-first approach to. So that's what we did with these guys. So they have on-prem apps, right? Line of business apps that need to have SQL databases, that need to have performant on-prem components that we cannot just say, oh, we're doing a hosted SaaS app, right? So what do we do there? We do Azure, right? We do Azure Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS. And with Azure, we then do AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop. So this means that we are cloud first, we're cloud native, right? We're using cloud services. How many times can I say cloud in a sentence? We're doing Azure cloud first, but we're still using a traditional or legacy dependent application, right, in that infrastructure. So that's the thing that I wanted to focus on, that first bullet point, is that migrating all of your data and services to the cloud does not mean getting rid of old apps that you need. It means hosting them in the cloud where you can put in your baseline security, your device trusts, Azure management, a lot, and then not have to manage your infrastructure, right? Azure, Microsoft will manage a lot of that stuff for you, and you still have a lot of granular control. You can do virtual firewalls, not have to buy new equipment. There is a multitude of benefits to doing it this way, not just security compliance, but also just cost savings and an ease of use / management. So that's what we did for these guys, including Azure Files for file shares, right? So we didn't just take a lot of their file shares and move them into SharePoint. A lot of our customers come to us, and my collaboration practice here at Red Level will kind of vigorously nod their head in agreement, is that you don't just want to take 15 years worth of files on a file share and dump them into SharePoint. That's not what SharePoint is for. Don't do that. Bad, wrong. SharePoint is a modern, dynamic collaboration platform. It's the back end of Teams. It's our external collaboration vector for small B2B endeavors. And we don't just want to take a bunch of crap and put it into SharePoint, because then you just have a crappy SharePoint, right? So for a lot of our customers, we're hedging our bets. We're splitting the difference. We're saying, look, your modern collaboratory stuff, these certain drives, these folders, our personal drives, whatever, we're going to put them into OneDrive or SharePoint. We're going to take your architecture, put it there, because you are collaborating on these. You need to co-edit them. You need to have versioning. You need to have metadata. Great. For everything else, maybe 2 years and older, maybe 5 years and older, maybe just certain drives, right? We're going to put it in Azure Files, blob storage. This means that you're going to have cloud drives with data, but it's just a traditional Windows file share. So you don't have to deal with SharePoint migration or permissioning, whatever. I call it the cold storage or the archival data, right? You still may need to go back there every once in a while, but it's not pertinent, collaborative, modern data that you need to kind of have in SharePoint Dynamic. So that's what I want to talk about in this bullet point, is that migrating all your services to Azure and M365 doesn't mean that we're modernize everything, right? It doesn't mean that we're transforming everything into full hosted services like SaaS, like Microsoft 365, like Exchange Online, like SharePoint. It just means that we're moving things to the cloud, even in a more traditional or legacy sense. Great, so where did we go from there? Well, we tackled our baseline security objectives across the zero trust pillars. The cloud makes that easier than ever, right? We have an analysis, we have benchmarking, we have Secure Score. I've talked about Secure Score multiple times on this series. It's extremely important. You need to go into your environment and look at your Secure Score. So we use Secure Score to look at improvement actions, to install, to have our security and compliance tools reach out and touch everything and analyze everything, right? That's the VAO portion, the visibility automation orchestration. So basically, we're moving everything in the cloud. We're using our baseline security benchmarks to say we have to have certain identity security, certain device security and device trust, device management, application security, discovery management, all of that across all of the zero trust pillars, right? And then that's just our baseline. We go in there and we say, we need security, we need it in place, and these are the baseline scores, metrics, action items that we need to tackle. We do that before we open everything up to people using it in this business. Well, then we need to go a step further, right? Because this is a regulatory heavy industry and client. Obviously banking, financial services, very sensitive data, very sensitive clientele. So for this client, we used our compliance templates and regulatory framework within Microsoft 365 and Azure to say, I am trying to adhere to NIST 800-171 or HIPAA. I'm making these up because I don't want to zoom in to this client. I mean, you can do the math for a financial firm, right? Let's say NIST, right? CIS benchmarks. But we can use templates within Microsoft 365 and Azure to say, hey, I have this compliant requirement. What do I need to do? It's that simple. You apply a template. It says, well, based on NIST 800-171, you need to do these 43 things. You start tackling those 43 things. Almost all of them pertain to security. Is this locked down? Is this segmented? Does this have layers of identity access to get to it? Do you have device trust in place? Are you doing MFA, right? So security and compliance are two sides of the same coin. And it's really nice to have regulatory or compliance frameworks drive our security strategy because it's the easy button. Sometimes they're hard to implement, but it's easy because you have to do them. You have to go in there and do specific tasks, security tasks, in order to satisfy regulatory compliance framework, right? Regulatory requirements for your industry. So yeah, we've got to do these 43 things. That's it. It's kind of easy because it's laid out for you. And more often than not, when you adhere to all of those compliance and regulatory framework stuff, you will have an extremely secure environment, whether you like it or not, right? Because you had to jump through so many hoops. All of those hoops made you more secure. So it's a beautiful two-sided coin approach. And again, it's a great starting point. If you're looking to get started, a lot of our clients right now are using their cybersecurity insurance forms to get started as a roadmap. So they go, hey, Red Level, I've got my cybersecurity insurance form. Last year, it was like 5 questions. This year, it's like 36 questions. And I'm like, yeah, it's because everyone's getting breached, right? So we kind of use that as a roadmap, which is almost a regulatory or compliance framework in the security questionnaire, because it's saying, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And they're like, no, I'm not. Crap. We do those things. It's the same thing for regulatory or compliance. Chances are you are an industry that has some compliance or regulatory standards. If you carry HR data, you have some HIPAA requirements, at the very least there. So it is in your best interest to figure out what compliance or regulatory frameworks you need to fall into and use those as a guiding resource, as a roadmap into tackling your security objectives, right? Because they don't just pull these compliance things out of thin air, or cybersecurity insurance. They're not just making up those questions, right? There's a reason smokers have higher health insurance, right? Because they're higher risk. They are identifying risk. Compliance, regulatory, cybersecurity insurance are identifying risk and trying to help you mitigate it. So you need to use those things to identify risk and help you mitigate it. Great. So that's the journey that we took with this client. It was not an easy journey, but it wasn't too long. We went pretty fast. And as we'll see here in a few minutes, it's ongoing, right? There's on-prem traditional stuff. There was a lot of that set it and forget it until the next update, right? Oh, we're castle moat. We have firewalls. Oh, we're in a stable state. That's not how the cloud works. There's always new enhancement and improvements coming to the products and services. There's always new attacks. There's always new vulnerabilities, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, this is the journey. We migrated all our data and services to Azure and Microsoft 365. Again, that does not mean modernizing all your apps. We can have legacy or traditional apps in Azure, use AVD to access just those apps, for example. We can put all of our old files in archival, blob storage with Azure files, whatever. And then we modernize everything else. Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, right? The more modern collaboratory productivity suite for everything else. And then obviously device management, application management, data governance and protection, all happening in this space. So this is just a pat on the back for us. We worked really hard on this. The client worked really hard on this. We feel proud of ourselves. But yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory and simple. Third-party agency, I can't name names, but a big fancy auditing agency said, this is one of the most secure environments we've ever audited, and we have seen a lot of environments. That's the proof in the pudding right there, is when you commit to doing this work and doing it right and spending some time and spending some money on the right licensing, the right services, the right training, the right change management, people, process, technology, right? When you do all of that right, you will benefit from this. So again, backing all the way up, some of the benefits that we have in the cloud expand so far above and beyond security and compliance. It's hard to overstate them, right? Cost savings, time saving, energy saving, more collaboration and productivity, more access to apps and systems. But we're doing all of that more securely. It's counterintuitive opening things up, but with the cloud, I can get so granular about identity and access, threat protection, automation, AI, all of that. I can get so fancy with it that it is more secure than your traditional on-prem firewalls, file shares, VPN, whatever. It is more secure. This audit proves it, right? They did not have the same audit finding when they were all on-prem a few years ago. So, pat ourselves on the back. You know, we're really proud of this. If you need help with this stuff, come talk to us. We can get you on this journey and going. Yeah, that's really it. That's really what we'd like to say at this point. So let's talk about let's talk about this part here. So this is continual improvement. This is what I mentioned a few minutes ago, that in the cloud, we have stable states, kind of, but we mostly have continual improvement, right? Because when we analyze secure scores, different things can come in and out of the secure score, usually come in, right? Things that are very rarely being deducted or not measured more aptly. It's almost always things being added to the secure score. Okay, you have a 90% now, and that's, you know, whatever, X amount of points out of 562, but we're adding 38 more points. So now your score went down to 87% or 88%, right? Because we have changed the game. We have made it so that we are measuring your security and compliance configurations against a new benchmark with enhanced data, with enhanced analytics. So that's the continual improvement. So we use the Microsoft Secure Score and Compliance Score to track these items. Things come up. Oh, there's a new item in NIST 800-171. Oh, there's a new way to think about MFA, right? So we use the Secure Score and Compliance Score to track those things, because those are the way to track things. I've been over this over and over this series and in the Modern Workplace Summit. It's vitally important to track your Secure Score. It will change. There's very little set it and forget it in the cloud, right? There's stable states. Typically, you're not going to swing, 10, 20 percentage points on a secure score up or down either way without taking much action. But your score will change. It will go up and down, usually down, and you need to keep fighting to make it stay up and go up, because they are adding new ways to measure that score. And it's very important you stay on top of those new measurements, because they are important. Great. So another part of this too, besides benchmarking, besides new threats and new ways to measure our score and security and compliance posture, is just new features, right? This, in continual improvement, a new feature may come out for Teams that changes the game for how we do meetings, for how we do webinars like this one, right? That may not have to do specifically with security and compliance, but you need to drink from the fire hose at all times. That's the cloud. We'll be doing a presentation one day, and it's sharing my screen, and I'll go show something in a security portal, and then I'll go somewhere else, and then we'll come back. Oh, there's a new button there. Look at that. Within the time that this meeting has happened, Microsoft has added a new button that does something, right? It doesn't always pertain to security compliance, but you need to address the perpetual changes and improvements, new features, refined features, deprecating features, right? They often get rid of stuff. This is a constantly changing environment. You need to stay on that if you are going to have a secure and compliant environment, let alone happy users. If you're ahead of it, hey, dear users, guess what? Next week, Teams is doing this. Isn't that cool? Here's how that works. Here's an article about it. Don't you look good as an IT department being proactive, right? And then you've already dealt with the security issues of that new meeting feature in Teams, right? So you've done that in the back end. On the front end, you're communicating with your users about a new product and feature. That's awesome. That's going to change their lives for the better, right? So another part of our continual improvement is using alerting and automation to mitigate continuous security threats, right? So we're constantly, just like algorithms learning algorithms, Facebook, throwing you the outrage loop, and Google refining your search results, right? Our algorithms are constantly refining themselves. Part of that process is manual, right? Oh, we want to change the way this automation and alerting goes. Oh, we want to change the way that a risky device has some governance actions, or an unsanctioned cloud app usage does an alert, right? So we're constantly tuning the alerting and automation framework that goes into this high security and compliance posture. And again, that's just continual improvement. For visibility, that that's probably the thing that changes the least, because you want to get the most visibility out the gate, and then you're just constantly adding to it, or it gets added to automatically. But the alerting and automation is what we do like to think about addressing, doing a quarterly audit. Are we getting the alerts we want? Are they valuable? Are they actionable? Are we automating a response to these alerts, right? Once we've decided that we're getting the alerts we want, not getting the alerts we don't want. Are we getting alert fatigue, right? Are we getting too many? Is it valuable, right? Because even if you're getting good alerts, but you're getting 70 a day, that may not be valuable, because your inbox is getting overrun, and you're going to miss that important alert from that other service. So we're constantly thinking about these things. We're constantly refining them and getting better. We are not perfect. This organization is not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Even the military gets breached. Even the DoD and DOJ gets breached, right? No one in this world is perfect. There's no 100% solution. It is about becoming better and better, and becoming not only not low-hanging fruit for attackers, but becoming, one of the harder targets to hit. And then you're very secure and compliant. And then you just can keep getting better and better, right? So that's the bottom line here, is that continual improvement is not only recommended, but it's needed. And we're in it with this customer. It's not like we did all those things on their journey and went away. We're doing this all the time for them. And it's so valuable, because we stay on the bleeding edge with each other, and we're constantly getting better, right? You can only get better for this stuff. And that's where we like to live. So yeah, that's my presentation for this week. Thank you so much for